North Carolina, the birthplace of country, blues, and Cherokee Indians, is now a fairly conservative and prosperous state in the northern part of the South Atlantic states. Unlike South Carolina, the state is fairly quiet in terms of crime, and if it does make the national news networks, it is more often due to snowstorms, tornadoes, and severe thunderstorms. The coast, with tropical storms and flooding, or acres of dense wildlife refuges, with the danger of wildfires and landslides, cause far more danger than people. But not always. On April 10, 2019, it was 17-year-old Tristan Borlase who caused the storm. The teenager, from a religious large family, rather violently massacred his loved ones at the family home in Deep Gap, North Carolina. On Wednesday evening, emergency services received a call from a young woman reporting a large amount of blood in her home and 3 missing family members, her parents, and younger brother. She added that she couldn't reach them. Police officers responded to the call and immediately drove to Deep Gap, about a mile from the Watauga and Wilkes County border. When patrol officers reached the home, they found blood on the walkway leading to the house, on the mat by the front door, and a blood trail inside the house stretching up the stairs. Officers searching the area outside found the body of a man covered in leaves under a hammock with several stab wounds. A little later, at about 10:30 p.m., the family's pickup truck was found hidden in the woods with the woman's body covered with a blanket and bags of mulch placed on top. A senseless, impulsive domestic tragedy. Jeffrey Borlas, Tristan's father, was born on April 16, 1975, the pastor of the conservative Pietist Bible Fellowship Church, a Protestant religious movement with Mennonite roots. The boy was brought up in an atmosphere of special importance of personal piety and the feeling of being constantly under the strict and watchful eye of God. Serious and careful study of the Bible in the meetings and moral instruction were the foundation of his upbringing. Any kind of entertainment, even laughter and colorful clothing, was frowned upon. Good works, charity, missionary work, love for the enemy, and renunciation of all kinds of violence were considered virtuous. Jeffrey absorbed all these fundamentals as the son of Pastor Harry Borlas. He grew up a kind, loving, gentle, and patient boy. As a young man, Jeffrey got a summer job at the Big Surf Water Park, located on Lake of the Ozarks in the U.S. state of Missouri. On his first day of work, the young man met a charming, meek girl. Her name was Tanya May Trandom. Same age, same views, and virtually the same upbringing. Tanya, like Jeffrey, had grown up in a family where Christian values were paramount. Patient, humble, selfless girl saw in the pious young man an ideal future husband and caring father. She gave Jeffrey a picture of an elderly couple holding hands and said, "That will be us one day." Jeffrey's mother, Kathy Brown, prayed that God would give her son a wife who loved the Lord with all her heart and believed her prayers were answered. The young lovers married, and their family became a continuation of the ideas in which they themselves were raised. The photo presented by Tanya was carefully kept in the family album. Quite quickly, the young couple had their first child, an adorable girl named Taylor. Then, one after another, came 3 more children. The youngest was a son, whom the parents named Tristan. Taylor became the truest big sister to her siblings. She took care of everyone, helped everyone, supported everyone, but especially the girl was friends with her younger brother. For Tristan, Taylor became the best and only friend. Despite the age difference, they were everywhere together. They played sports, were fond of music, and pranked together. Pietism believes that the task of parenting is to establish the kingdom of God in the child's heart. As the 4 children grew older, Jeffrey and Tanya decided to fulfill their Christian duty and adopted 4 more boys from the orphanage. Open, loving, and friendly, according to others, the family became even larger with a total of 8 children. Taylor, twins Kaya and Alexis, Misery, Al, Stephen, Meliku, and Tristan. According to the family's religious beliefs, children were forbidden to use cell phones and social networks until a certain age, and asceticism in needs and desires was encouraged. Boys were forbidden to date girls until the end of high school, that is, until the age of 18. Bible study and other religious matters were mandatory. Otherwise, children grew up like any other boys and girls. Parents made no distinction between native and adopted children. They were all given the same attention, care, and affection. The loving mother created a harmonious atmosphere and carefully watched the internal order, relations between brothers and sisters, prayed a lot, and did good deeds. The couple believed that virtue should be nurtured by their own actions and taught their children mercy by example. When the people of Haiti were hit by a hurricane, Tanya sold her expensive wedding ring and sent the proceeds to a foundation building housing for the victims. In return, she bought herself a simple, regular, cheap ring. In 2015, Taylor graduated from high school and moved to Boone to attend Appalachian State University. This event hurt Tristan deeply. He lost his only friend and was alone. Taylor came home at the first opportunity, but now she had her own free life, and Tristan was left with the same old rules and routines. He had rebelled against the restrictions set since childhood and disagreed with his parents' religious views. He was annoyed by the lack of a cell phone and the inability to communicate with his peers on social networks, especially since such communication has become an integral part of the life of modern teenagers. After Taylor's departure, quarrels with his parents only became more frequent. In December 2017, there were pleasant changes in the life of the family. Jeffrey and his wife and children moved to a new house with a large lot in Deep Gap, Watauga County in North Carolina. The house was located on a dirt road leading into a wooded area and was much more spacious than the previous home. In addition, the new dwelling was just under 2 miles from the home of Robin, Tanya's mother, and the children's grandmother. The close proximity made it possible to call on her at any time if help was needed in looking after the youngest children. Whether the move had been as pleasant a change for Tristan was unknown, for he had to change his school and his surroundings. In Watauga, he went to the local high school and started track and field. Other kids took jobs as counselors at summer camps. At first glance, it might have seemed that there was never any trouble in the Borlas household, but that was not the case. Over time, Tristan's behavior became troubling. In 2018, the school insisted on several consultations with a psychologist about anger issues and a lack of impulsive behavior control. By 2019, when the young man was in high school, despite his excellent abilities, he began to have trouble understanding some school subjects, and these difficulties only increased with each passing day. From a diligent student who had always participated in the life of the school before the move, he turned into an indifferent, withdrawn teenager who lost interest in his studies. Tristan began to be late for lessons and had no desire to learn at all. It got to the point where he would put his headphones on during class and sit with an absent look. Some teachers tried to help Tristan, and he even made contact, but everything ended with unchanged indifference and lack of interest. Besides, the young man did not always behave adequately at home. By this time, he already had everything he constantly argued with his parents about: his own cell phone and access to social networks. Tristan spent a lot of time on the internet. In his Instagram account, he referred to himself as a musician. Taylor was constantly interested in the lives of her siblings and noticed that Tristan quarreled with his parents more often and argued with his mom about religious topics. She learned of his other problems at school as well. The sister tried to talk to her brother, but the former closeness was no longer there. After a while, the young man became friends with a girl from the religious community, Evelyn Faith Jackson. They began to meet, not particularly observing the prohibition on intimate relations. Sometimes they smoked forbidden plants, and Tristan complained about his mother, who at night discusses his behavior with him, which made Tristan tired and unable to concentrate in school. The young man was very worried that he has many faults that make him not live up to his mother's expectations, and she cannot be proud of him. Told that with his father he can be himself, but with his mother it is different. On April 10, 2019, a lot of secret things from Tristan's life came to light. Surveillance cameras were installed in the barn where the goats were kept, and Tristan's old cell phone, which he sometimes used secretly from his parents, was used as an access point. On this day, Tanya took the phone for some reason and read text messages in which her son was having sexual conversations with girls and discussing illegal drugs with them. Tristan was at school at the time and saw his phone start blinking with incoming messages. Shocked parents wrote to him in a family chat about the information found on Tristan's old phone. That same day, Sherry King, an English teacher in Tristan's class, called his mother with complaints about the teenager's grades and behavior. She would later testify at trial that Tanya Borlase called her back and told her that she and her husband would be at the school soon and would pick Tristan up early to discuss his grades with him. Sherry King relayed her parents' words to Tristan, who was extremely surprised by the news. The couple left their youngest child with his grandmother and went to the middle school to deal with what was going on. The ride home passed in silence. At trial, Tristan will testify that the mother seemed tense and frowned constantly while leafing through his phone. A conversation took place at home that lasted about an hour and a half, after which Tanya texted her mother and told her that Tristan was not upset that they had taken away his phone and car keys until grades and behavior improved, and she would be coming to pick up the younger child soon. The message was sent at 4 p.m., after which the conversation apparently continued. From Tristan's words, he and his mother talked about the need to do well in school, cleanliness in relationships with girls, the dangers of illegal drugs, and that she did not want him to study religions other than Christianity. He was forced to listen and realized how much there was in him that should be corrected. They even made a list of qualities he should have to become a better person: compassion, honesty. This list the police would later find. At one point, Tristan said his mother approached him from behind, put her arm around his neck and applied pressure, causing him to instinctively jump up, turn around, and accidentally elbow her. According to him, his mother had never done anything like that, and that's why he reacted that way. His mother was startled by the blow, grabbed what he thought was a pair of scissors from a shelf, and moved toward her son. He, being in shock at what was happening, stabbed her, thinking he was defending himself, and ran to his father for help. Later, forensic examination will find no evidence on Tristan's neck that his mother strangled him. And during the trial, the prosecution will show the jury photos of Tanya Borlase's neck taken by the medical examiner that show a broken neck bone. The psychologist, on the other hand, will show during the trial that, in his opinion, Tristan Borlase was mentally sane at the time of the crime, but suffered from a severely impaired cognitive state, experiencing depersonalization, derealization, and feeling events unreal. However, the court and jury would disregard the psychologist's opinion, finding Tristan to be a skillful manipulator and a socially dangerous individual. According to Tristan, he did not understand what was happening, why his father was running away from him, and why he stabbed his father when he caught up, even though he was begging him for help. He remembered his father picking up a rock and saying, "Tristan, don't," but was certain that his father would rather let him be killed than try to harm him. Neighbors later reported hearing loud screams on the Borlas property at about 5:30 p.m. that Wednesday. After it was over, Tristan returned to the house, where he vomited, which, in the psychologist's opinion, indicated severe stress, not cold-blooded, calculated murder. However, the jury disagreed with the psychologist's opinion. After all, they were presented with the forensic medical examiner's reports at trial. Jeffrey Borlase's autopsy report noted multiple stab wounds to the left chest and back, slash wounds to the arms and hands, and abrasions to the skull and forehead. Tanya Borlase's autopsy report indicated that she suffered multiple stab wounds, including to her left chest, back, and arm, as well as injuries that may have been sustained when her neck was compressed. The results indicate that the parents were defending themselves, not attacking. In addition, Tristan had a chance to get away from his mother if he felt threatened, and even if the mother was the victim of a sudden lapse of judgment and misperception of self-defense, the father's murder and subsequent actions already looked different. Tristan returned to the house, removed his mother's body and placed it in the truck, hiding it under a tarp. He then cleaned up the crime scene for about an hour and even used a hose to wash the porch outside the house. Around 8:30 p.m., Tristan arrived at his grandmother's house to pick up his younger brother. Robin thought this seemed extremely strange. Tristan explained that his parents urgently needed to go to the store and apologized that they didn't have time to stop by and pick up his brother. About 20 minutes later, Robin received a call from her other grandson, complaining that his parents were not answering the phone and had not come to pick him up from his part-time job as they usually did. Grandma dialed Alexis and asked her to go get her brother. They agreed that they would meet at Jeffrey and Tanya's house and figure out what had happened. As they drove up to the house, Robin noticed blood on the porch, but since the couple raised animals, she wasn't particularly concerned. She went into the house to get a flashlight to go check on the animals and saw that there was blood everywhere. At that time, Alexis ran into the house and reported that she had found some kind of body under the hammock near the animal barn, and she thought she saw Tristan with blood on his face in a getaway car. Alexis called emergency services. The operator told her, along with all family members, to lock themselves in the car and wait for the police to arrive. The police arrived 10 minutes later. After several hours of waiting outside and talking to officers, they were all taken to the station, where they were told that Jeffrey and Tanya Borlase had been found dead. While examining the crime scene, detectives located a computer interface in the home that connected the video surveillance system located inside the home to the monitors. Detectives saw a screen on the monitor with a grid of various cameras broadcasting live video. They immediately requested a warrant to obtain the credentials from the system's servicing company. Meanwhile, Tristan contacted his girlfriend Evelyn and arrived at her home. She realized that he was worried about something, and he had a few scratches on his forehead and arms. Tristan assured her, however, that he had only had an argument with his parents and had gotten the scratches while playing with his dog. Evelyn described Tristan's injuries as 3 scratches on his forehead, a wound on his hand, a cut on his finger, and a bruised fingernail. Immediately after the crime, Tristan posted a photo of the injuries on Snapchat, writing that he was hurt by his father's dog. According to his girlfriend, the photo matched the injuries she saw on him that evening. Tristan stayed the night. The next morning they went to Walmart and McDonald's and were going to go to school, but then changed their minds. Evelyn was convinced that Tristan just wanted to get away from his parents for a while, so she offered to stay with one of her relatives for a while. He agreed, and they traveled to another state. On April 11th, Sheriff's Office personnel obtained the username and password to the video surveillance system at the Borlas home. They reviewed the camera footage and learned the circumstances of the crime. Police obtained a warrant for Tristan's arrest and turned over the details of the vehicle he allegedly drove away to the National Crime Information Center. A search for the car and subsequently a chase began. Investigator Matthew received information that Tristan had been seen in Tennessee and began the paperwork involved in extraditing the alleged perpetrator. He asked Robin, Tristan's grandmother, to go with him to the apprehension so that he could talk to the young man in her presence, given his young age. As they drove in the car with Evelyn, Tristan noticed blue lights following them. He sped up and told his friend that his parents must have registered the car as stolen to find him. He sped down the highway trying to pull away, but eventually gave in to his pursuers and pulled over. The Ford was surrounded by police cars. Evelyn was completely confused when she saw her boyfriend being handcuffed and taken away in a squad car. The officers noticed that Tristan did not appear upset or agitated. His April 11, 2019 interview, which was conducted by investigator Matthew, was videotaped and audio recorded. The young man answered all questions, confessed to the crime, and detailed all his actions. At times, he cried. Tristan Borlas, who was a month away from his 18th birthday, was taken into custody without bail. A little later, the sheriff's office obtained a warrant to investigate Tristan's Snapchat account and a total of 5 of his cell phones that may have contained information related to the crime. A search warrant was also issued for the Orchard Road home, where detectives found another phone found in the master bedroom, a keyboard and pen from a safe, paper cups, a hammer, a straw, knives, a red-stained swab, eyeglasses, a kitchen towel, a hammock, a digital video recorder, a rug and miscellaneous papers, South Dakota cards, and boots. According to court documents, a search warrant was also issued for the Ford F-150 truck, and a red-stained swab, laptop computer, charger, and steering wheel cover were seized. A warrant was also issued to search the home of Tristan's girlfriend in Boone, as the young man was spending the night at her house. Court documents say a pillowcase, A zippered sweatshirt and a notebook were seized from the property. The results of the investigations and searches helped investigators reconstruct the chronology of events down to the smallest moments. The version of self-defense was considered untenable. Funeral services for the couple were held on April 17, 2019 at Bible Fellowship Church. Pastors William Krantz and Brad Gray officiated the ceremony. The children, experiencing the loss of their parents at such an early age, found the strength to write a touching obituary. "Our parents never got the opportunity to live for themselves because they always lived for us. Jeff and Tanya have always been an incredible joy to their parents and always a source of pride. Our parents made the world a better place, and we hope to continue that legacy by passionately loving people and pursuing Jesus." After the funeral, Taylor visited her brother in prison for the first time and was unpleasantly struck by his behavior. Not only was Tristan unrepentant, but he tried to blame the family for what had happened. It seemed to her sister that he was convinced he would regain his freedom sooner or later. Taylor felt disgusted, turned around, and left. Her second visit was on May 11th, on the occasion of Tristan's birthday. This time, she came with Grandma Robin, but the meeting was not much different from the previous one. Her brother was praising the party they'd thrown for him at the prison in honor of his birthday. Taylor found the behavior unacceptable, especially since their parents had died tragically. After this visit, the family decided to cut off any contact with Tristan. The trial began on February 16th, 2022. At the trial, Tristan expressed regret for what had happened. He agreed with everything his family had said about him and supported the decision for a permanent ban on contact to make the family feel safe. On March 3rd, Tristan Borlase was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on each count of first-degree murder. Judge Horn noted that mental health was somewhat of a mitigating factor, as the psychologist's report indicated that Tristan Borlas continued to suffer from anxiety, depression, and had developed symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. However, Judge Horn stated that the psychologist found no evidence of psychotic disorders, although the anxiety and depression may indeed have been exacerbated by the continued use of illegal drugs. The most unusual fact in this story is that neither Tristan's family, nor his lawyer, nor he himself, made any statements about the motives that led to the crime. A pious family and a socially dangerous man using illegal drugs, who himself did not fully understand the reasons for what happened, or competently played the misunderstanding. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, a self-hating young guy with low self-esteem, prone to depression, actively demonstrating symptoms of anxiety and not receiving the necessary qualified medical care. During the court session, the fact of panic attacks, which his mother helped him cope with, as she herself was prone to them, was voiced. One of the main provisions of the pedagogy of pietism: children burdened with original sin are immoral from birth, and therefore education and school should correct them, preparing them for the correct from the point of view of pietism, behavior in life by establishing strict discipline and suppression of children's self-consciousness. Strict love is supposedly for the good. A child who may have had an inherited overreactivity of the nervous system grew up under strict limits, constantly feeling that he was not a good enough godly person. Some by nature need more love, some less. The little boy was intensely jealous, according to his older sister's recollections, of the new brothers, whose appearance shifted the parents' attention. First, there was rebellion, then depressed moods and feelings of worthlessness, joined by illicit weed, panic attacks, and depersonalization-derealization states. He didn't accept his parents' religiosity. He couldn't be what his mother wanted him to be, and to be what he was, meant to be in need of correction. Was that list of needed fixes that the two of them wrote together with his mom, instead of finding contacts for a good therapist, the last straw? And was there any way to avoid such a senseless and merciless tragedy in a truly loving family? On Saturday morning, August 19, 2017, Norberta Greywind looked at her 22-year-old pregnant daughter struggling to climb the stairs to her third-floor neighbor's apartment complex. Savannah was 8 months pregnant. August had been unusually hot, and she could barely walk on her swollen legs. A few hours later, William Hahn, the boyfriend of Brooke Cruz, the same neighbor who had invited Savannah over, came up the same stairs. When he entered the apartment, he found Brooke scrubbing the bathroom, Savannah's bloody, shredded body lying on the floor, and a basin with a baby in it on top of the toilet lid. Upon seeing William, Brooke picked up the infant and held it out to him with the words, "This is our baby. This is our family. Please help me." Against any healthy logic, William helped clean up the blood, carry bags of bloody towels and clothes out of the apartment, wrap bags around Savannah's body, securing them with duct tape and ropes, and later dispose of the corpse. Today's story is about the tragic intersection of the lives of two contrasting couples. The dark one, with a sticky, heavy, irresponsible, and unhealthy past defining their present, and the light one, loving, easy, and open. The result, broken families, and the death that accompanied the birth. The day after the deed, William Hahn announced to his co-workers that his spouse had given birth to a little girl named Phoenix. In some macabre irony, the couple who took Savannah's life and daughter away from her named the child after the mythological bird with the ability to die and be reborn. Later in the interview, Brooke's boyfriend would describe his days with Hazley, as her family would call the girl, as beautiful days. "That baby made me a happy little family man for 2 days. It's been great. I never thought I'd ever experience that again." Savannah Greywind was born on August 9, 1995 in Burke County, North Dakota. Savannah's father is an ordinary white American and her mother is from the Spirit Lake Sioux Indian tribe. The girl had 2 brothers, Joy and Casey, and the younger sister Kayla. The parents, Norberta and Joe, were very proud of their children. The family lived in Fargo, North Dakota until Savannah was 9 years old. Then, in 2005, they moved to Spirit Lake Reservation, Spirit Lake, a Native American Indian place in the eastern part of the state. Savannah adored nature and animals, especially horses. On the reservation, the girl met Ashton Mayton. The couple met when Savannah was 15 years old, and since then, they have not parted. When it was time for the young people to go to college, the family moved back to Fargo. Savannah found a job caring for the elderly at a nursing home, studying to become a nurse, and preparing to take the exam in September. By this time, Savannah was a happy young woman expecting her firstborn. She and Ashton had found an apartment, put down a deposit, and planned to move into their own family nest in early September. For now, Savannah was staying with her parents on the bottom floor of a 7-unit, 3-story apartment building. It was in this building on the 3rd floor that 38-year-old Brooke Cruz and 33-year-old William Hone rented an apartment. No one is born evil. A person is the result of experiences that make them who they are. Brooke Cruz has created a woman within herself capable of such gruesome murder. Wanting to find wholeness through accepting all sides of her personality, she nurtured a dark side step by step that she couldn't control. Perhaps there are 2 different personalities within each of us, darkness and light. I believe we are predestined to have dark and light thought processes that manifest as personalities. One of them is socially destroyed quite early on. But is that a good thing? Brooke wrote in one of her pieces, "Ever since she was a child, Brooke was drawn to mysticism and found a special beauty in the crimes of serial killers and high IQ maniacs. As an adult, she had already studied the psychology of criminals professionally and strived to learn to think like them so she could understand them. Brooke said that if Ted Bundy came to see her, she would definitely help him. But Brooke Cruz, alas, was not a healthy, stable person herself. All the lived information was downloaded into the personality, which was characterized by impulsive behavior, anxious avoidance, irascibility, frequent changes of partners and places of work, inability to finish what she had started. The young woman tried to fight it, made discipline lists, and even followed them for a while, but eventually fell off again. By the time she was 38, she was overwhelmed by depression, physical illness, exhaustion from unhealthy relationships that included regular physical abuse, and a disturbing fear of losing her partner because she couldn't get pregnant and give birth. Brooke couldn't take it anymore. Darkness and light mingled. Killing a pregnant woman was seen as one way to get the infant she wanted. After her arrest, Brooke's apartment was left with a stack of books ranging from clinical, criminal, forensic, and legal psychology to obstetrics. In a desk drawer, she found notes listing birthing kit items such as scissors, blades, clamps, and gloves. an infant cardiopulmonary resuscitation bag, and the hormone oxytocin. Brooke Lynn Cruz grew up in Florida's Bradenton, Sarasota neighborhood, where her mother, Paula Nelson, still lives, according to Christmas cards. Her parents divorced, and 7 children, including Brooke, were left to live with their mother. According to the recollections of one of her sisters, the family lived quite well, according to diary entries Brooke kept throughout her later life. She had a difficult childhood, which she tries hard to forget. Transition age changed the caring, open-minded girl, made her testy but not aggressive. Brooke became a troubled teenager, and she was the only one of all the children who decided to move in with her father, whom her mother called a professional criminal. Life with her father didn't work out, and she found herself in and out of foster homes. From that point on, the siblings pretty much lost touch with Brooke. They only learned that Brooke is the mother of at least 7 children from a news story about a shocking crime. At the age of 15, Brooke met Aaron Edwards. In 1995, when she was about 17, she gave birth to a child in Pinellas County, Florida, left the infant with the father, and moved away. A court ordered the mother to pay child support, but Brooke did not honor the court order. She will remember her daughter when she turns 14, and their communication will be limited to a few Facebook messages. In the evenings, Brooke worked as a waitress at the Chinese Dragon restaurant and as a sales representative and animal specialist at the Petland Pet Store in Bradenton, Florida. In early 2002, Brooke, 23, was jailed in Missouri for falsifying documents but was released on parole. On August 31, 2002, she was arrested again and sent to jail in Hidalgo County, Texas for parole violation. In 2006, at the age of 27, Brooke married Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota. The young woman managed to give birth to 2 children and worked as an administrative assistant in her husband's carpentry shop. The marriage, in which Brooke cheated on her husband, lasted only 3 years. The couple divorced in June 2009. The custody of the children, according to the documents, became the father, and Brooke left for California without explanation. The only thing she did carefully and diligently throughout her life was to keep diaries and record all the events that happened to her. After the terrible crime, the entries became available to the press. The diaries told of a string of lovers, home births, and abortions. There was a common point in all the stories. The relationships began with heart-shaped marks around the edges, but after a while, the entries about the men changed. Each of them started playing intellectual games with me, making me feel that I wasn't good enough, not smart enough, Brooke wrote. It's impossible to say with certainty whether Brooke chose such guys on purpose, or whether any of her relationships went through such trials as a result of internal problems. However, she absolutely believed that Carl was bullying her and making her look like a bad, promiscuous mother, and this fact was perceived by her as emotionally traumatizing. However, despite this perception, she returns to her now ex-husband's house after a trip to California, registers on a dating site, and begins to study psychology in earnest. On the dating site tagged, the young woman meets Andrew Murray, a chef from Katoomba, New South Wales, Australia, and decides to move to Australia in late 2011. In January 2012, in an argument that erupted over a child custody issue, Brooke grabbed a knife and attacked her ex-husband. Police arrested the woman and filed criminal charges. Brooke denied the knife attack, but chose not to wait for a court hearing and fled to Australia on false immigration papers, where she married Andrew. The Australian marriage lasted exactly 6 months. Andrew found out about her American past, husband, children, and fake immigration papers. After discovering the truth, his wife, according to Andrew, began threatening him with arrest for aiding and abetting, causing him to even go to the police and tell them everything just in case. The marriage is remembered by Andrew for the huge amount of talk about maniacs. He would later reveal that as early as 2012, Brooke was already obsessed with crime. She studied psychology and nursing, did her thesis on serial killers from her words. She was always reading books about maniacs and crime and could tell you anything about them. I thought she became more and more aggressive as time went on. In total, it took 6 months and 10 days from the time she arrived until she returned to the U.S. in October 2012. On September 22, 2012, Brooke made a diary entry where she wrote that she had changed significantly for the better. After returning from Australia, she was engaged in a lengthy custody battle for her 2 children. She may have had a chance for a new life if she reconciled with Andrew Murray, but in late 2012, Brooke met 28-year-old William Hone, who had been convicted of child abuse a few months earlier after he brought his son to the hospital in January 2011 with a fractured skull near his right ear. Brooke falls in love with this guy who is twice divorced, has 2 kids, doesn't pay child support, has anger issues, and a court order for no contact with his children. Brooke is full of energy and desire to be her new self, take the kids, and take steps in that direction, and finds a job. In 2013, Brooke turns a hobby into a profession and enrolls at Minnesota State University in Moorhead, where she takes courses such as social behavior, physiological psychology, cognitive theory, psychology of deviant behavior, and directed research. She is particularly interested in the psychology of serial killers. The newly minted student wrote a paper on them and received the highest grade. Only her personal life clouds the picture. The relationship with William began beautifully. "We have such a relationship with him, which is nice for children. We're loving. We don't yell at each other. We're affectionate and kind," Brooke said. But over time, the relationship turned into codependency, the joint use of alcohol and illegal substances. Brooke thought she was doing well, but felt worse and worse. She started avoiding her children, changed jobs because she couldn't get along with the staff, and became more and more immersed in her psychological research into the darker sides of humanity. On December 23, 2014, she lost her custody battle. Judge Waldemar of the Ottertail County Courthouse granted temporary sole physical and sole legal custody of the children to their father, Carl. That same day, Brooke suffered a panic attack and was taken to the hospital emergency room with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, according to medical records. Years later, after her trial for the murder, she would say it was the events in 2014 that were the turning point in her life, when she lost the ability to control her impulses and evaluate her actions. But what those events were, Brooke did not elaborate. In January 2015, in her diary will appear entry, "I feel like I started this relationship with a purse full of love coins, and slowly but surely this purse is empty, and I just have nothing to give. Our intimacy is not the same as before. About once a week he makes time for me. The intimacy lasts about 7 to 15 minutes. He doesn't care at all about my satisfaction." Brooke complained of inattention and became increasingly withdrawn. 5 months later, she was diagnosed with gallbladder disease, and physical and psychological deterioration set in. Brooke practically stopped leaving the house. In May 2016, police responded to a call. William Hahn had brutally beaten his girlfriend in the bathroom. He pleaded guilty to assault and was banned from approaching Brooke. 6 months later, police came again on a neighbor's call and found Hahn in Brooke's apartment. He pleaded guilty to violating the restraining order. And then they got back together, and there was no longer a healthy moment in the relationship. Brooke was unable to have children after having an abortion in 2011. William, on the other hand, constantly demanded a child from her. In early 2017, after another fight, Brooke lied to Hahn about the pregnancy to keep him from leaving, and even emailed a fake ultrasound picture and a picture of a positive pregnancy test. She found a recording of some random baby's heartbeat online and showed it to her partner, saying it was the heartbeat of their future child. In August 2017, they had another big fight, by which time it was obvious that there was no pregnancy, but since William had already told everyone around about the future paternity and did not want to look like a laughingstock, he literally demanded a child from his girlfriend, mentioning the pregnant neighbor 3 floors below. Brooke Cruz would later tell police officers that she took William's demand as an ultimatum and a desire to take the baby away from Savannah, even though he didn't say so directly. Brooke had medical knowledge, and she set about compiling a list of what she needed to induce labor. By now, she was used to anticipating and doing whatever her young lover wanted her to do. On a Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke knocked on the door of a downstairs apartment and offered Savannah $20 for serving as a model for a dress Brooke was supposedly sewing. Savannah accepted. Before going upstairs to her neighbor's apartment, Savannah ordered a pizza, expecting to grab a bite when she got home an hour later to drive her younger brother to work. The mom-to-be didn't return by the planned time. The brother went upstairs on his own around 2:30 in the afternoon. He heard the sound of a sewing machine, but no one opened the door. A few minutes later, Savannah's father, Joe, also went upstairs and knocked on the door. Brooke yelled out that they were still working on the dress. Savannah was trying it on, and that was why no one could come to the door. Norberta drove her son to work herself. When she returned home, she found the pizza untouched, texted her daughter a few times, and after getting no response, went upstairs. A neighbor opened the door and explained that Savannah had long since left as soon as they finished their fitting. An anxious Norberta went downstairs to her apartment and looked around. Her shoes, purse, car keys, and belongings were all left in the apartment. Savannah couldn't go for a walk because the heat and swelling made it painful and difficult for her to walk. Norberta called Ashton, hoping he was the one who had picked up her daughter, but the young man replied that she wasn't answering him either. The worried mother called the police and began driving around the streets looking for her pregnant daughter, who may have suddenly become ill. I was driving and I thought, well, if she had gone somewhere, I would have found her nearby, but deep down I knew she hadn't gone anywhere. Later that day, police searched Brooke and William's apartment because it was Savannah's last known location. The landlady welcomed them in and did not obstruct them, but the police, lacking a warrant, did not look in closets or behind closed doors. The police department explained to the family that Savannah was of age and old enough to make her own decisions without informing family members. Because there was no evidence that any crime had occurred in or near the home, investigators concluded that the young woman had gone somewhere voluntarily. Savannah's family saw the indifference with which the department's officers were working, and it was very upsetting to them. The police returned to search the apartment 2 more times and came out empty-handed. William Hoehn would later testify that during one of the searches, he hid the infant in a suitcase and Savannah's body in a dresser from which all the shelves had been removed. 2 days after the brutal murder, the couple would drive the dresser with Savannah's body to a bridge over the Red River and dump it in the water. On August 23, 2017, William's co-workers told police that he had blabbed about having a baby at home. That same day, residents of the apartment building heard a baby crying from apartment #5 and immediately notified police. The information received allowed the officers to obtain a warrant and return to the familiar apartment already, with a serious, thorough search, during which a live newborn baby girl was found. Brooke didn't hold back and revealed that Savannah herself had given her the baby 2 days after her disappearance. According to her, Savannah didn't want this baby, and that day when she came to help with sewing a dress, she asked Brooke how she could induce labor on her own. Then she left and showed up 2 days later at 3 a.m. with the baby in her arms and handed him to Brooke. The couple was arrested and Savannah was reported missing. The baby was taken to a local hospital and placed in the temporary custody of Cass County Social Services. A few days later, a DNA test confirmed parentage, and the girl was reunited with her father. For 3 more days, police and hundreds of local residents combed the valley looking for Savannah. Please check your property, buildings, garages, outbuildings for any signs of entry or any indication that someone has been there. Landlords, please check your vacant apartments that you may have for any signs of entry or evidence that someone has been there. If you are willing to check your dumpsters, we ask the public to help with that, Chief Todd said at the press conference. On August 27th, 8 days after Savannah's disappearance, fishermen came across a body wrapped in plastic on the Red River near Harwood. Savannah was identified by a tattoo on her leg that read, "Too beautiful for Earth." On August 28th, Brooke Cruz and William Hoehn were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information to police. The couple began to confess. Brooke said she instigated the altercation by accusing pregnant Savannah of stealing mail and mistreating her cat. The verbal argument turned into a physical scuffle, and Brooke pushed her. Savannah, falling, hit her head on the bathroom sink and lost consciousness. Brooke then took a knife and removed the baby, making a cut from hip to hip. Savannah went in and out of consciousness as she did so. Under questioning, Brooke confirmed that William Hoehn did not know of the impending plan. According to her, William came home, went into the bathroom, saw Savannah, and asked if she was alive. Brooke replied that she didn't know and asked for something to do. William left the bathroom briefly and then returned in his underwear holding a rope, which he used to strangle Savannah. In doing so, he said that if she had been breathing up to this point, she was definitely dead now. Next, Brooke said, the two of them scrubbed the floor and walls and stuffed the lifeless body into a bathroom closet. When the police knocked on the door, Brooke tried to remain calm and not worry. The officers searched the apartment but couldn't find anything. They did not have a search warrant, so the search was superficial, and the officers could not look in closets and dressers. According to the perpetrator, the child during both searches that day was under a blanket on their bed next to William. The girl was very calm and did not cry, so she was not discovered. At the time of the third inspection, August 20th, the body had already been placed inside the dresser and the infant was hidden in a suitcase. In the early morning hours of August 21st, they took the dresser down the stairs and loaded it into their Jeep Cherokee, drove it to the river and disposed of it. William Hone denied participating in the crime. He admitted only to hiding the newborn baby girl and providing false information to law enforcement in order to cover up the crime. Brooke and William were set bail at $2 million, to which William remarked that it was an unrealistic and unreasonable amount for any ordinary person. Surprisingly, he apparently thought he deserved something reasonable after Brooke Cruz was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. William's participation in the crime was not proven. During the trial, it was also revealed that Brooke's cellmate named Jennifer Robinson testified against her. According to the inmate's claim, Brooke mentioned that she was the one who strangled Savannah with a rope because she learned about Savannah and William's affair and thought that Savannah's child might have come from him. On September 28, 2018, a jury acquitted William, finding him not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. However, on October 30th, 2018, because he had pleaded guilty to kidnapping himself, he was sentenced to life in prison. The following spring, in May 2019, William appealed to the Supreme Court. On October 7, 2019, the sentencing review trial concluded. Judge Olson, who had originally sentenced William to life in prison, stated that despite the Supreme Court's dissent, he was still going to give him the harshest sentence possible at this time, which was 20 years in prison. Given that William has already spent 775 days behind bars, he will have to serve more than 17 more years of his 20-year sentence. Baby Hazley remained unharmed despite such an unnatural delivery. The girl is now 6 years old and goes to kindergarten. Savannah's parents and the girl's father share joint custody. The grandparents maintain a public Facebook page where they post updates on how the granddaughter is living and what she is doing. The case has become a high-profile case. Norberta is convinced that her daughter's disappearance was not taken seriously because Savannah was Native American. I feel that her disappearance was not taken as seriously as the disappearance of a white woman. I've lived in Fargo almost my whole life, and I've seen how differently Native Americans are treated. After Savannah's death, Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp introduced a bill called Savannah's Law, which was signed into law in October 2020. The bill aims to combat violence against Native American women by improving collaboration between federal, state, and tribal authorities. Norberta commented on the passage of the bill, "It's sad that my daughter had to die for people to take Native Americans seriously." Life in an orphanage is not the best. You don't have your own corner, you don't have your own time, and if you can't fight back, you get beaten up by those who have been here for a long time. Amanda and Anna Marie McClure are a little luckier than the others. When there are two of you, the likelihood of fighting back increases. Besides, these juvenile aggressors only pick on loners. The sisters were comfortable alone, and they did not try to get acquainted with anyone. They hoped that their stay in this hell would not be long. Soon their mother would find out that their father had been imprisoned, which meant that the girls were sent to an orphanage, from which they should be taken away as soon as possible. It is impossible not to find out that their father, Larry McClure, was sent to prison. It was talked about on TV and written in newspapers for a long time. Time passed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. It became clear that we could forget about returning home. One day, the sisters rescued a newcomer, Meredith, from being bullied. The girl lived with her drug-addicted mother, was very thin, frightened, and flinched at any rustle. She came to the shelter after her mother died of an overdose, and Meredith herself was afraid to call the emergency services, so she lived with her body for a few days. One day, a friend came to visit her mother, and upon finding her friend dead, called emergency services from a payphone so as not to be involved in any way. Meredith became a friend to the McClure sisters, the three of them becoming more fun and safer. Amanda and Anne Marie had never told anyone the reason they were here. Meredith had asked about it once, but Anne Marie had brushed it off and blurted out something about a policeman father who had tried to apprehend a dangerous criminal but had been killed on the job. Amanda listened to the story with her eyes wide open, but her sister gave her a look that told her to stay out of it. Enraptured by their father's posthumous deed, Meredith told about the sisters' fate to the other students of the orphanage, and in an instant the sisters turned into real stars. They were respected, they were envied, because most of those who were here had parents who either died from illegal substances or went to prison. Eventually, all the children wanted to be friends with the sisters, and their reclusive life came to an end. Unfortunately, this beautiful life, albeit in an orphanage, quickly came to an end. Unknown from where the information appeared that the father of Anne Marie and Amanda is not a dead policeman at all, but on the contrary, a living criminal, serving time in prison for violent acts of a sexual nature towards a young girl. Then the fate of the sisters turned into a real hell. However, after a while they were lucky. Fortunately, two different families decided to adopt the girls almost simultaneously, and they got the opportunity to start a new life. But however, already separately, the connection between them broke and was lost. There are no details about the sisters' life in foster homes. Amanda and Anna Marie could remain in this story only children of the rapist, but their adult life flowed into the most high-profile case of the state of Virginia. Amanda is known to be married to 38-year-old John McGuire. They met when she was already 29 years old. Her adoptive parents even began to worry that Amanda would be a loner for the rest of her life, and the lack of biological family, including the betrayal of her mother, had a negative impact on her psyche. The foster parents breathed a sigh of relief only when Amanda admitted to them that she had a young man with whom they were going to get married. It was the second wedding for John, and he also had two sons from his first marriage. Anne Marie had never been able to build her family. One could be happy for Amanda. She really could have a strong and loving family. John was an incredibly positive guy. What could be said against it, if even with his ex-wife they had a warm and friendly relationship? After a while, the sisters' father, Larry McClure, was released on parole. Settling still in the same Virginia in a mobile home, he made no small effort to find his daughters. The first place he went was to Amanda's foster parents, Gwenham and Alex. Larry went straight to their house, said hello, introduced himself, said he wanted to see his daughter and asked for her contacts, address and phone number. Outwardly, he looked very bad, even frightening, deep wrinkles all over his face, huge bags under his eyes, and besides, as it seemed to them, he was not sober. No, he didn't smell of alcohol, and he didn't stagger from side to side on shaky legs, but in general his behavior was not adequate. Glenn refused Larry's request, but promised that they would be sure to tell Amanda that her biological father was looking for her. Larry had been really freaked out when he'd heard the phrase biological father, but he'd thanked him and left. Glenn had indeed kept his word. He had told Amanda that her father was free and looking for her. In the back of Amanda's mind, there was a demon who denied everything and advised to send her father to hell, and an angel who advised to give her father, though a criminal, another chance. The angel won, though it was unclear who was better to listen to. First, Amanda called her father. He said he was very happy to hear from her, asked how she was doing. She told him that she was doing well, married and feeling happy. Larry was happy for his daughter and suggested that she come over for a joint dinner with her husband. Amanda didn't realize if she should live to see her father, but it was as if he knew just what to push. Come on, forget the old grudges. I have lived all these years with only one thought, to see you and Anne Marie. Anna, unlike you, must have missed me after all. You've already seen her? Amanda wondered. Of course I have. We went on a nature trip with her and had a wonderful time, like a real family, like father and daughter. It was like those years of separation never happened. She also asked a lot about you. If Amanda didn't know how to deal with her father, she wanted to see her sister, who had been separated from her in the orphanage almost 20 years ago, and so she agreed. In the case file, there is no description of their first meeting, but 2 facts are known. Larry lied about Anne Marie. At that time, she lived in North Carolina, which is 186 miles from Virginia, and Larry had never seen or spoken to her. And so, father and daughter met. Their meetings led to Larry getting Amanda and John hooked on illegal substances that he brewed himself in his camper. Larry literally used the daughter and son-in-law before meeting the father. The financial situation of the couple was stable, but Larry pulled money from them for the production of the legal substances, and when Amanda and John lost their jobs because of their addiction, Larry persuaded John to register because drug addicts received help from the state in the amount of $180, which were still not enough to buy substances and ingredients. That's when Anna Marie appears in the story, and Larry uses her in the same way. He gets her hooked on substances and pulls money out of her. Amanda and John find themselves at an impasse. They have no jobs. Because of huge debts, they lose their house, and the only way to stay afloat is to move into Larry's camper. John's folks at this point still had no idea. He called his parents. His mother was seriously ill at the time. John informed them that he and Amanda were going on a trip together. That was the last time John's parents heard their son alive. In fact, no trip was planned. Amanda and John moved in with Larry, where they engaged in a small circle of illicit substance use and alcohol consumption. The whole tragedy occurred on Valentine's Day. John, who rarely recovered from the effects of illegal substances, was still madly in love with Amanda and decided to prepare a surprise for her, a festive evening in the family circle. He bought meat and alcohol, cooked a fancy dinner, at which, in addition to his wife, of course, were Larry and Anne Marie. Under the prolonged influence of the drugs, a terrible madness occurred in the family. Amanda and Larry became much closer than father and daughter. Unfortunately, John couldn't see it coming. Yes, you all thought right. Father and daughter considered themselves a couple. Therefore, John was now redundant. During the meal, John spoke very many warm words to Amanda, and Larry was insanely nervous about it, and the tension grew. Eventually, Larry interrupted his son-in-law's speech and asked him if he could be completely honest with his wife. The man replied in agreement. Then Larry proposed a game. John's legs were tied, and he was asked to answer honestly all the questions that related to his past life. Yes, at first, the questions were really harmless. Childhood, school, university, and all that. But at some point, Larry, under the influence of drugs, began to accuse John that he was an undercover FBI agent, and when John denied it, they started beating him up. It ended when John, begging for mercy and covering himself with his children, tried to untie his legs and had a bottle of wine smashed over his head. Yes, it was the same wine he'd bought for the family dinner. Larry, Amanda, and Anne Marie tortured John for 2 days and used illegal substances in parallel. Finally, when they had had enough, Amanda pulled a black bag over her husband's head and squeezed it around his neck until he stopped breathing. John was buried in the backyard, after which the crazy family celebrated the engagement of Larry and Amanda, father and daughter, and naturally it had to be celebrated with a new batch of psychotropic substances and alcohol. On the 3rd day, their psyche went haywire. They began to see John's ghost, police sirens, and the ground in which they buried John seemed to them unearthed, as if John was able to get out of there, escape, and report everything to the police. It sounds wild and crazy, but the crazy father and daughters decided to back up. They dug up John's body, checked his pulse, and even his pupils' reaction to flashlight light, even though the body, for all its biological signs, was already in the decomposition stage, but that didn't seem enough to them. To prevent John from coming back to life and escaping, they cut his body into pieces with a wood axe and drove an aspen stake into each piece of his body. The remains were reburied in different places and covered with lime to speed up the decomposition process. 3 weeks later, Larry and Amanda were married. Larry changed his name so that no one would know they were related. The new family decided to start a new life. To do this, they moved to Kentucky and agreed to stop using illegal substances once and for all. In the rented house, to hide all suspicion from themselves, they even hung a U.S. flag over the door to the house, just like their neighbors did. By this time, John's ex-wife and parents began to worry that he wasn't making contact. And in 2019, John's mother even filed a police report about his disappearance. As for Larry, he failed to notify the police that he had moved from one state to another, and that was against the terms of his probation, which is why he went back behind bars. In prison, Larry's psyche finally failed. It's hard to expect anything good when you've been using illegal substances for a long time, mixing them with alcohol, and then, at the snap of your fingers, you find yourself in a place where you can't get them. Withdrawal syndrome works. Increased nervousness, lack of boundaries between reality and fantasy. It's pretty clear if you marry your own daughter. Larry was pretty sure that the parole violation was just an excuse to dig up the backyard and find the remains of John's body. He urgently needed to contact Amanda or Anna Marie and tell them to have his daughters dig up the body parts and rebury them somewhere far from home. All prisoner calls are always tapped, so the information had to be conveyed in a veiled manner. Larry even prepared a speech and thought of everything in detail, but the problem was that he was denied calls. Finally, he couldn't stand it any longer, called the policeman on duty, and told him he had something to confess. Larry's logic was that if he confessed to the murder before he was charged, he could avoid at least the death penalty. And if he blamed it on his daughters, yeah, that would be even better. The cop didn't even believe Larry at first. What murder? What body parts buried in the backyard? What was this lunatic's idea? Why would this junkie dig his own grave? But by law, the man's word had to be verified. At first, the check wanted to organize only formally. Yes, there was a statement. Yes, the place was checked. No, nothing was found. But then it turned out that John is really considered missing, and just in case, to the place of Larry's residence, sent a police detachment. First on the ground, they found traces of the lime that Larry had mentioned, and then absolutely all the words of the criminal were confirmed. The McClure sisters were apprehended immediately. Amanda and Anna Marie were in shock and simply could not believe that their father, and for someone else and husband, could confess to such a brutal murder. They were even more shocked when they learned that Larry tried to make himself an innocent sheep, and in his testimony indicated that it was his daughters killed John, and he was only an unwitting participant in the crime. Then each of the family began to save their own skin and to convince the police that it was just him in this terrible story was an accident. It was especially hard for John's relatives in this situation, since his body, in fact, there was no body and there were only remains. These remains had to be taken from the criminalists, transported to his parents and buried in a closed coffin. It has been mentioned many times that John was a very nice guy, so despite all the difficulties, his parents were able to bury him. Some of his friends helped with money, some with transportation, some with funeral arrangements. John was buried in a Lutheran church on October 25, 2019. On February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, someone in the McClure family posted a Facebook post on John's behalf that he was leaving on a trip where he would not be able to be in touch for a long time and asked his friends not to worry about his long absence. This indicated that the crazy family knew that they were going to kill the poor guy soon, so they misled everyone so that the family wouldn't start sounding the alarm. Despite such a brutal crime, for the duration of the trial, Larry and Amanda had 6 months added to their sentence for the marriage of a daughter and father. As such, marriages are criminalized in the state. The trial began. Larry was given the floor. I have felt remorse for my own children for most of my life. Yes, when they were very young, I committed a serious crime that put them in an orphanage. Their birth mother abandoned them, and I was the only one who had a heartache for my little ones. I am extremely grateful to the people who adopted my babies. I will not hide. I even attended churches and prayed for their adoptive parents when I got out. I crazily wanted to make up for all the years I had missed. That's probably why I acted the way I did. I mean, I could have walked away from the crime if I'd convinced Amanda not to do it. But I confess, I didn't. Mr. Judge and jury will probably not understand me, and I share their point of view. But the thing is, they weren't in my shoes. John was a fine young man. I feel sorry for him. If I could, I would turn things around. But no one can raise the dead, and I couldn't say no to Amanda, my favorite and youngest daughter. But she didn't care about John. All she wanted was to be able to withdraw government money from John's account. Have you ever been willing to kill a man for $180? No? Then if you don't understand me as a father, you should understand what kind of person she is. She's a monster, not a person. Me, Amanda, and Marie, we are overly addicted to illegal drugs, so we deserve to be punished. I want to address the jury. No matter what sentence you choose for me, I'm sober about my health and say that I can't live more than 10 years. I'm very sorry for this situation, and I apologize to all of John's loved ones. Again, he was a great guy. The trial went on for a very long time as the defendants flip-flopped back and forth on the decision to kill John. Amanda, who could not tolerate such a long trial, even made a deal with the investigators where she was promised to be charged with involuntary manslaughter. At the next trial, Larry gave a very different speech. When it all started, the four of us bought the ingredients to make illegal substances and went back to my trailer where I started making them. Amanda came up to me and said she wanted to get back at John. The fact is that John, under the influence of the drugs, raped Anna Marie and she got pregnant. And as for me, I had to earn the trust of my daughters after all these years apart. I couldn't refuse, you know. I blame myself for that. I think every day that I should hang myself. But why should it be me? If this crime is their fault. After Larry's speech, John's family got the floor. His mother sobbed non-stop, so much so that she couldn't say a word. Even if I can ever forgive the McClure family, I will never be able to forget what happened. Also, know that I wish I could live to see the day when one of them dies before me. Then John's children were given the floor, who literally cursed the killers and said they would never forgive them. The judge handed down the final verdict, which sentenced Larry McClure to life in prison without parole. When the punishment for Amanda was announced, her adoptive parents were very sorry that they did confess to their daughter that she was wanted by her father. They had brought her up with freedom of choice all her life, but they did not know that this freedom could have such an impact on her future fate. Amanda, in turn, during the announcement of the verdict, said that all this is the fault of her father, who could not survive the feeling of jealousy. Amanda's poor parents asked the judge to consider that if it were not for the negative influence of her father, their adopted daughter would never have gone to such a brutal crime. However, prosecutors viewed the murder as a conspiracy so that Amanda and Larry could be together as a couple. The first hearing was dedicated to Amanda, and she was sentenced to 40 years. But the judge noted that she would probably be behind bars for only 20 years. When the sentence was read to Anne Marie, she tried her best to prove that she was against John's murder, but she was forced to go to the end by her father and sister. And she was a witness at the wedding of Larry and Amanda only because she was afraid for her future life. In the end, Anne Marie was sentenced to 40 years in prison,